It happened about 5 years ago, when I moved into an old apartment building in the city. The place was a bit run down, but I wasn't in a position to be picky. The rent was cheap and it was close to work, so I took it. The apartment itself wasn't much, just one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room with a single window that faced the alley behind the building. It wasn't the best view, just some trash cans and overgrown bushes, but that didn't bother me at first. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched TV, and went to bed. But there was something off about the place. At night, I would hear strange noises. It wasn't the usual creaking of an old building settling. It was more like a tapping sound, almost like someone was gently knocking on the wall. It would always start around midnight and last for a few minutes before stopping. I figured it was just the pipes or maybe a neighbor being weird, so I didn't think much of it. But then one night, as I was sitting on the couch watching TV, I noticed something strange out of the corner of my eye. I looked toward the window and I saw a face. At first I thought I was just imagining it, but then I saw the person's eyes clearly. Dark, hollow eyes staring directly at me. There was no movement, no blinking, just a face in the window, watching me. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know if I should move or scream. I just sat there staring back, terrified. The face was gone within seconds. I jumped up, pulled the blinds down, and rushed to the door to check outside. There was no one, not a soul in sight. I went back inside, checked the locks on the window, and tried to calm myself down. I convinced myself I had been seeing things, maybe just too tired or stressed from work. But over the next few nights, it happened again. The tapping sounds, then the face in the window. And each time the face would get closer. At first it was just barely visible, like it was standing in the alley, far off in the distance. But the last time I saw it, the face was pressed up against the glass, so close that I could see the individual strands of hair sticking out from under a hood. I could even see the breath fogging up the glass. I was losing my mind at that point. I called the landlord, but he didn't take me seriously. "You probably just have an overactive imagination," he said. "The place is old. The window might be warped or something." I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my things and moved out a few days later, but that's not the end of the story. A few months after I left, I ran into an old neighbor from the building. She told me that the apartment I had been in had a history. No one had lived there longer than a few months and years. Every tenant left in the middle of the night, and no one ever really knew why. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. The last tenant who stayed there, he was found dead. They say he went crazy. The police found him curled up in the corner of that apartment, eyes wide open, staring at the window. They think he had seen something he couldn't escape. She paused, looking at me, as if weighing whether or not to share more. Then she whispered, "They say the man in the window is still out there, watching." I've always been a bit skeptical about the supernatural, but what happened to me in that house has made me question everything. It started when I moved into a small old house out in the country. I was looking for a fresh start after a tough breakup, and the house was affordable and had a certain charm to it. It was isolated, which I thought would be peaceful, but it quickly became something else entirely. The first few nights were quiet, a little too quiet actually. The house was so still that I could hear the creaks of the floorboards with every step I took. But I told myself it was just an old house settling, the kind of noise you get used to over time. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, reading a book. It was late, around midnight, and I could feel my eyes starting to get heavy. The house was pitch dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of a lamp in the corner. I was about to get up and head to bed when I heard something, a soft shuffle from the hallway. It wasn't a noise that could be easily ignored. It was distinct, like someone or something was moving slowly across the floor. At first I thought it was just the house, but then I heard it again. Closer this time, the sound of footsteps. I got up and walked to the hallway, but there was no one there. No one in sight, and nothing that could explain the sound. I figured I was just hearing things, so I went back to my book. But over the next few nights, the footsteps continued. Every time they sounded a little closer, like whatever was in the hallway was edging its way toward me. Sometimes I would hear a faint dragging sound, like someone was moving across the floor on their stomach. And then there were whispers, low, unintelligible whispers that seemed to come from the corners of the house. I tried to ignore it, but one night, as I was walking to the bathroom, I saw something in the hallway. It was a shadow. It wasn't like a regular shadow, though. This one was darker than the darkness around it, and it had a strange, almost fluid shape. It didn't belong there. The shadow was just standing in the hallway, facing me. It was tall, and I could feel its presence. There was no face, just a figure that seemed to move slightly, as if it were breathing. I froze, my heart racing. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just stared at it, terrified. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it dissipated, vanishing into thin air, like it had never been there at all. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the rest of the evening in the living room, lights on, my phone clutched tightly in my hand, ready to call for help if anything happened again. But the next morning, I found something on the floor outside my bedroom door. A dark smudge, like something had dragged its hand across the wood. It was in the shape of a handprint. I didn't know what to do. I tried to brush it off as my mind playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew something was wrong with that house. The whispers kept getting louder, and the shadow became a more frequent presence. I started seeing it more clearly, especially in the corners of my vision. It would be there when I woke up in the middle of the night, standing at the end of my bed, or sometimes pacing the hallway like it was waiting for me to look. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed up everything and left, telling myself it was just my mind getting the better of me. But even now, I still see the shadow sometimes. I've been staying at a friend's place, but I swear, whenever I walk down a hallway, I can feel it. That presence, watching me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to shake the feeling that something followed me out of that house.